The Glazers are finished at Man United. The Glazers know they cannot stay at Man United, and they're already planning their exit from Man United, having open talks again with the Qataris, with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. They've ignored the Qataris and Sir Jim Ratcliffe for months throughout the transfer window, and all of a sudden today it's confirmed the takeover is still ongoing, and actually talks are ongoing to bridge the valuation. This comes out after reports today that the stock value has dipped in value over 600 million loss. The Glazers have lost 600 million, and this is all because of a report that they leaked to the media as a negotiation tactic to try and get more money out of Qatar, which we will get into in a second. All these reports that they were saying as a negotiation tactic to try and scare Qatar into upping their bid has actually resulted in the value of the club going down 600 million because people are scared that they're staying. Now, why is this significant, people? Because the fact that the club can go down 600 million in a day just because of reports that the Glazers might stay pretty much indicates that if they do stay, Manchester United would be such a financial mess. Let me get into the report. Let me share my screen for you. Because if a report that they might stay results in us losing 600 million, if they do stay, they could lose $1 billion at the club. This is an indication that the outrage, that the financial situation of the club will not be improved if they stay. This is massive, and I'm going to get into the Qatari news in a second. But essentially, the Glazers have been threatening that they might stay at the club because they believe the club could be worth 10 billion in 2 years if they stay. There's a new Champions League format coming. There's going to be the ability to sell TV rights. The Glazers are saying, oh, we might stay at the club because actually we could get 6 billion for the club in 2 years. It's going to be worth so much more. The club will only be worth so much more if they ran the club properly, cleared the debt, did up the stadium, backed Ten Hag, and we won trophies. If we win trophies, if the debt is cleared, if the stadium's good, then the club is easily worth 10 billion. The club can be worth 10 billion in 3 years if the Qataris come in. But the Glazers will never make the club worth 10 billion. And they're saying, and we're putting out stories, we're going to stay because we're not getting our money's worth, la-di-da. The reports that they're staying has caused the stock value of Man United to go down by 600 million. Reports that they're staying. This means the Glazers have looked at this and gone, okay, like we physically can't stay. We've got no leverage. The Qataris are going to see this. So Jim Ratcliffe's going to see this. They're going to see, actually, you know, if we stay, the club is screwed financially. Absolutely screwed. Because the fact that they lost 600 million in 1 day just because of a report that they might stay that wasn't very reliable pretty much proves if they do stay at United, the value of the club will plummet. They will not get the value of the club back up. They will not get the value of the club any higher. The outrage will be so big. The financial consequence of the club will be so big that now they've put the club on the market. If they announce they're taking the club off the market, the financial consequences will be so big that there's no financial benefit for the Glazers staying. What do the Glazers like to do? The Glazers are businessmen. It's all about money for the Glazers. Every decision around Manchester United right now is about what's going to generate the Glazers the most money. And if staying was going to generate the most money, they'd stay at the club. But they've realised if they stay at the club, the value of the club will decrease so much. There's no value of staying at the club because it's not going to go up in value. It's going to sink massively. They're making no money out of the club now. If they stay at the club, they're going to make even less money because the value of the club's going to go. They know they have to sell the club. And why this news is massive is because it's come out today by Mike Keegan. Sources with knowledge on the Man United sale process said that negotiations are continuing. He says the talks are aimed at bridging what is a substantial gap between the current bids and the Glazer valuation. Mike Keegan has confirmed, Lawton of the Times has confirmed that the reports that the Glazers are staying and taking the club off the market is not true. They've spoken to people from Sir Jim and Sheikh Jassim's camp, and they have no awareness that the Glazers are taking the club off the market. The first people to know would be Sir Jim and Sheikh Jassim if the club was going off the market. And in fact, Mike Keegan, who has been the best, he has been the most reliable source throughout this whole takeover, because I've said with the Manchester United takeover, every single bit of information that comes out on this Man United takeover, we have to take with a massive pinch of salt. But when it comes from Mike Keegan, it's believable. If it comes from the Sun, if it comes from the Mail, we're like, no. If it comes from Mike Keegan, if it comes from Lawton of the Times, if it came from Ornstein, if it came from Fabrizio Romano, there's something to believe there. Obviously, you would need multiple journalists to believe it, but Mike Keegan, who is a good journalist, has actually said talks are ongoing right now between Sir Jim Ratcliffe, between Qatar and the Glazers to bridge the gap. The Glazers have ignored Qatar for months. They've not had any talks with Qatar for months. Then all of a sudden, they're back in talks with Qatar, and it's confirmed trying to bridge a gap. The Glazers are planning their exit. The Glazers are planning their way out of Manchester United. You know, they're in talks to bridge the gap with the bidders. The Glazers are not happy. I did an exclusive video today because I got some exclusive information on this takeover from someone, or not really the takeover, but the Glazers side. And I said in this video, the Glazers are really unhappy because they're not getting what they want from the bidders. They want 6 billion. They've got 5.2 billion. They've been delaying the takeover. The whole delay of the takeover has essentially been a game to try and get 6 billion from the Glazers, to try and get 6 billion from the bidders. That's why they delayed the club. And they've realized that, you know what, Qatar, so Jim, they're probably not going to cave. They're probably not going to get 6 billion. It came out today, the Glazers are frustrated. They're not getting 6 billion. They blamed it on having average players on long contracts. But actually, the truth is you're not going to get 6 billion for the club because of the debt, because of the stadium, because the club is not worth 6 billion. So the Glazers are upset. The Glazers are angry because they don't want to sell the club for 5.2 billion. They're incredibly greedy. They want to sell the club for 6 billion, but they've realized they might not get 6 billion. And they've realized that actually they've got no power in negotiating this deal because Qatar and Sir Jim know they're desperate to sell. Qatar and Sir Jim know they have no choice but to sell. And actually they might have to compromise with the Qataris, which is essentially what's going on because they're in talks with the Qataris, they're in talks with Sir Jim to try and bridge the gap. That's essentially what's going on. It's been confirmed by Lawton of the Times. It's been confirmed by Mike Keegan today that basically the club is still on the market. It's not been taken off. And Lawton of the Times, who is briefed by, I believe, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's side, and I believe that Mike Keegan's got a brief on, of course, the Qatari side. But they basically said, as recently as last weekend, sources close to the sale process insisted that Rain are working on a deal with clients. You know, Qatar have been coming out saying they've been in the dark for months with the takeover. They're not sure what's going on. All of a sudden, in the last few days, it's basically come out and said, you know what, they're actually having talks right now with the Qataris to bridge the gap, having talks right now with Sir Jim to bridge the gap. They probably put out that report that they were staying as a last-ditch effort to try and scare Qatar to put a bigger bid in. As my source that I have, I spoke to you guys earlier today, I said in my live stream earlier today, I've got some information on the Glazers. They're not happy. They want 6 billion for the club and they're not getting 6 billion for the club. And they know they have to sell and they feel that they're in a weak negotiating position and that actually, you know, they might have to compromise with Qatar. They might have to compromise with Sir Jim. I said that in my video earlier. The Muppeteers have confirmed that. Mike Keegan has confirmed that this news and basically said, you know, this is the situation. And the Muppeteers have basically said, United's not off the market. The Glazers just want more money. The stories that they were going to take United off the market was a negotiation tactic because what the Glazers had done is they got a bid from Qatar they weren't happy with. They got another bid from Qatar they weren't happy with. 6 billion to Qatar is like £6 to us. And the Glazers know that. They think we want 6 billion for the club. The Qatars can easily pay 6 billion. Why aren't they giving us 6 billion? So the Glazers put out in March time that Sir Jim was on the verge of winning United takeover. What happened? The Qataris put in a third bid. It then came out a month later that this third bid was not good enough and that they were doing the final paperwork and Sir Jim was going to be the next owner of United. And this came out from all the reliable sources. What did the Qataris do? They put in a fourth bid. The Qataris who put their second bid in and said they weren't up in it, put in a third bid and put in a fourth bid because of all these reports coming out that the club was on the verge of being sold to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. The Qataris' fourth bid, or was it fifth bid, fourth or fifth bid, they said to the Glazers, this is our final bid, take it or leave it offer. And this bid from the Qataris matched Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid. But the one difference between this bid from the Qataris and Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid was essentially that this bid was for 100% of the club. It wasn't going to cause any legal troubles with the Class B shareholders or anything like that. That was the whole situation. So they basically matched Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid, and since then it's been a complete stalemate. We don't know what's going on. There was indications that the Qataris were winning, but it's been completely quiet. And the reason it's been completely quiet is because the Glazers were playing this game. The Glazers were playing this game. They were like, you know what, we want to try and scare or convince the Qataris into believing that we're going to stay at the club. That's what we're going to do because the Qataris haven't upped their bid and they say they're not upping their bid. And the Qataris know that they can beat Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Ben Jacobs came out and said the Qataris believe it will be no sale or it will go to them, that Sir Jim is not competition. They've matched Sir Jim's bid. They know it's so much easier for the club to sell to the Qataris and they know that the Glazers' ideal choice is to sell to the Qataris. It will only go to Sir Jim if Sir Jim ups his bid and puts in a bigger bid than the Qataris. The Qataris know that. So the Glazers are saying, well, the Qataris have said this is our last take it or leave it offer. But when we put out reports that Sir Jim was about to win, the Qataris upped that offer twice. The Glazers are now putting out reports that they're going to stay. They're thinking of saying they're leaving the Qataris in the dark for months, thinking that was going to scare the Qataris to putting in a bigger bid. But the Qataris are not stupid. The Qataris go, you know what, this club isn't worth 6 billion. They're in no position to ask for 6 billion. It's us and Sir Jim. Sir Jim doesn't look like upping his bid because he's got to borrow the money. They're desperate to sell. They know they need to sell the club. the only way they can stay is if a minority investor gives them 2 billion to stay, and no minority investor should be stupid enough to do that, because that would ruin that brand and company's image. If you give the Glazers 2 billion, the outrage will be so big that your brand or company will be hit with outrage, you'll lose money, but also, as we've seen, if the Glazers do stay at the club, the stock price will fall and that your investment might not be worth it. And if you're a businessman, would you trust the Glazers to spend your investment wisely? Not at all. So unless someone is ridiculously stupid and gives the Glazers 2 billion to stay, the Glazers can't stay. So the Qataris and Sir Jim know the Glazers can't stay. So the Glazers, who have been playing this game trying to threaten that they were staying to get the Qataris to up their bid because they've seen they've caved on their bid twice, have realised actually maybe the Qataris and Sir Jim realised, and they're not stupid, that we can't stay. And they've lost their negotiation power. And right now, talks are going on with the Qataris, with Sir Jim, to try and bridge the gap. They want 6 billion. They're getting about 5.2 billion from each party. There's an 800 million valuation. Potentially, there could be a compromise. Potentially, it goes to Sir Jim. Potentially, it goes to Qatar. But essentially, I think the news that's come out today pretty much confirms the Glazers are planning their exit. They're planning their exit, but they want to make sure they get as much money out of this club as possible. They want to make sure they rinse as much money out of this club as possible. But the Glazers are planning their exit 100%. Thank you for watching. Smash a like, smash a subscribe, and bye.